Hi, this is Mother Murderer Podcaster, a show about the most outrageous and best made-for-TV movies of the 80s and 90s.
I'm Katie Madonna Lee, a filmmaker.
And I'm Louis Jordan, a writer.
I, Katie Madonna Lee, grew up watching TV movies. I love them. They are a big influence on my work.
And I am new to TV movies, so I'm excited to learn about them. And this week, we'll be talking about the 1991 TV movie False Arrest, starring Donna Mills and Robert Wagner.
Perfect casting.
Which really, this movie should have been called False Lashes. Because
I love her lashes.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the scene where her lashes are not present is in the suicide scene, when she has a heart attack. Those lashes are not present.
Okay, all right. So this is another one of the, true crime TV movies. And it's, here, let's get the plot out of the way. So this is in two parts. There's 2 parts, so it's 3 hours. It's like an epic TV movie. Mm-hmm. So here, do you want to take part 1 or part 2?
Let me do part 1. Okay. So the plot is, I'll just say right now, the plot is so bizarre in that there is like a B story too with her daughter having cancer that it could only be a true crime. It could only be based on a true story because some of it is so bizarre. Anyway.
Yeah.
So it starts out with Donna Mills playing Joyce Lukezic. Lukezic. Oh my God. Anyway, she is a businesswoman extraordinaire. Okay. And
although we never really know exactly what her business is.
I don't know either.
It's like healthcare related somehow, but it's very unclear. Anyway.
It's very unclear. So she is a businesswoman extraordinaire, and she wears many career woman business suits outfits, which is amazing. Yes. So she's married to Ron, who is a stepfather to 3 children, which is very important. And he owns a printing company, and this printing company is going after government accounts, as we learn in the opening. And she visits her brother, who's a real estate developer, who obviously is involved with shisty characters. We meet them in the beginning. We go through her life. So we meet her kids. We meet the setup. We meet that she has a business partner in a medical who's a doctor, obviously, and they're chasing government accounts on that too. And it's New Year's Eve, and we meet her graphic designer who is addicted to crack cocaine and does not hide it. He's very flamboyant and well dressed. She seems to be very friendly with. She seems to be very friendly with everybody. And we are introduced to a dispute happening between Ron Lukezic, her husband, and Pat Redmond, who is going to be murdered later that night. And they are having a dispute about, Redmond does not want to invest in the company, this new venture. He doesn't want to be a part of it because he's their business partner, and he does not want to be a part of this new business venture
because it's in Las Vegas, and it's for people who have mob ties, and he doesn't want to be associated with the mob.
He doesn't want to be associated with them. So this is introduced to us, and Joyce is obviously walks in clueless about it. And later that night, they are murdered by 3 very out of a samurai cop, 3 hitmen from some urban area that looks like it's like the Midwest. It does not look like Phoenix at all. It looks like it's Chicago. But suddenly they're there that night. Anyway, they go, and these 3, Ron is murdered, and so is the mother of his wife. She's murdered, and it's horrible. It's basically it's horrible. And that night, Joyce and her husband are alerted to these murders, and Joyce goes and visits Pat's wife in the hospital, who has sustained a horrible brain injury from being shot in the head.
But she's still alive.
She's still alive. And she's able to identify the killers. So then there is a DA who is trying to, because these murders happened in a very affluent area, Scottsdale, Arizona, which is like the Beverly Hills of Arizona. Okay, so these murders happen there, and so the DA or district attorney Dan Ryan named, and it took me a long time because his name is Dan Ryan, which is like a very famous Chicago highway, the Dan Ryan Expressway. So I was like, the Dan Ryan Expressway, the DA is going after, who is played by the hot brother from Scarface.
Yes.
The remake. Brian De Palma's remake. Anyway, so he's going after, he's like determined, and I never learned why he's so determined to go after, Joyce, but he is determined to pin all these murders on Joyce. Not Ron, not anybody else, but he wants to pin them on Joyce. Dan Ryan interviews all these really well-lit and well-accessorized villains, I must say. And that's important to the story because they all are introduced as shady characters with thick New York accents. Everyone, all the bad characters in this movie, by the way, have thick New York accents, even though they are in Phoenix, Arizona. So every time a bad character is introduced in this movie, they're like, so what about it? And I'm like, they're a villain. I'm like, they're a villain. They're Italian. And it's like, wow. Like every single character who is bad has a thick New York accent. Like all of them. Across the board. So Dan Ryan is interviewing all these shiesty characters. He's going to New York City. He's going, to Chicago. He's going all over to pin these murders on Joyce. Because they're saying Joyce conspired to have the Redmonds murdered because they would not do the contract. They would not be involved in this Vegas business deal. Her brother leaves town. Her brother, the real estate developer, just straight up leaves town abruptly, which, screams guilt. He leaves. Her medical business goes under. And she is arrested, basically, at her house, already for the murders, after she goes out for frozen yogurt, which was very big in the early 90s. She gets arrested outside her house by Dan Ryan, the expressway. And she gets arrested by him. They bring her in for questioning, and it's basically she's already assumed guilty. So she goes in, and she is raped in prison by all these women. And then her husband is like, oh, we're going to get you out of here. And is like, you're only going to be in there for 2 days. And her lawyer basically just kind of doesn't really do that much to help her case. So all the characters we met earlier show up and are basically the prosecution brings them in, such as her graphic designer, Dennis Christopher, who is presented from day one. I mean, he's presented as snorting cocaine right away at work. And he's smoking crack at work, and he's the witness. So they're establishing that he's not a credible witness to the audience ahead of time, but to the court, he is. And he testifies that she said she wanted to have Ron murdered because he was cheating on her. And then they bring in this Italian guy who she once dated when she was 17, who was the one who basically was the one who said that she contacted him to have the Redmonds murdered. And Ron, her husband, who owned the business, was brought in for questioning, ever. I think that's very important. He was never, ever seen as somebody who would do this. It was all pinned on Joyce from the get-go. So she was sentenced to prison, and not
Yes,
general pop prison. Huh?
And then the way that part one ends is that she gets a heart attack. And
Oh, yes. I forgot
yeah,
about
she
that.
gets a heart attack before the actual sentencing takes place. Things are so horrible that she gets a heart attack and falls down in the parking lot. And then she wakes up handcuffed to a hospital bed. And then the verdict comes through that she's been found guilty of murder.
It's horrible. And her false eyelashes are not there.
Okay, so I'll do part two.
Do it.
Okay, so we open part two with Joyce handcuffed to her hospital bed, and she has lost the will to live. And she tells Ron that she'd rather die than go back to jail to be raped by more evil butch lesbians. And so Ron brings her a handful of sleeping pills and like practically forces them down her throat. Like he puts them in her hand and then he brings her hand up to her mouth. But she's in a hospital. So, when she flatlines, then the doctors come and revive her. So she's going to jail after all. And then Joyce walks into jail to find it filled with more evil butch lesbians who all catcall her. And then two of them attack Joyce and inject heroin into her face. But then she's saved by Nadine, who is a good femme lesbian. And also like one of the only good characters in this movie. So Joyce and Nadine become cellmates and best friends.
Lucky.
And then Joyce begins to suspect that Ron was the one behind the killings and that he set her up. So then pretty soon Ron leaves town with another woman and leaves the kids alone with like $50 for groceries. So he's gone. And it's clear that he planned the whole thing. He did it, and he pinned it on her. And the whole time that she was trusting him and him saying he would take care of it, he was just digging her in deeper. And the only thing that's getting Joyce through are more visits from her daughter Eden, who faithfully stands by her side. But then Eden learns that she has ovarian cancer. And she has to move away to stay with her birth father and get chemo. And for some reason, she decides to lie to her mother about this and say, I can't tell you why I'm going. Which I think is just so that then, Donna Mills can scream, Eden, don't go! So then... Joyce has lost everything except her false eyelashes. And she starts to toughen up. And then when a woman tries to cut in on her telephone call, instead of just laying down and taking it, Joyce clocks her in the head with the receiver. And then when the heroin injecting evil butch lesbians attack Nadine, Joyce beats the shit out of them with a mop handle. So she's fully become, like she's in prison. She's living that life. But also she's kind of like empowered for the first time. So with Nadine's encouragement, Joyce finds a lawyer, and then he appeals her case. And the second lawyer is like a lovably grumpy underdog in bad suits. And so he and his assistant go out and like do the legwork and track all the leads down to try to disprove the charges against Joyce and expose the conspiracy to pin the murder on her. So their first appeal is a mistrial, but then Joyce gets out on bail and tearfully says goodbye to Nadine in a very touching scene. And then she's reunited with her daughter in another tearful scene, who's recovered from cancer. And then is reunited with her son, who's like a complete like waste of space and an asshole who wouldn't come and see her because it's too hard to handle. And so then during her third trial, her new lawyer disproves every single witness for the prosecution that they have a fake story, and he exposes Dan Ryan as a corrupt cop, and then the jury finds Joyce innocent. And then she tells the reporters outside the courtroom that she plans to spend all of her time with her family because life is short and precious. And Ron is never found or prosecuted.
And Dan resigns.
But is never actually, like, he's probably asked to resign, but he doesn't face any charges or anything for, like, you know, witness tampering and all kinds of
ruining Joyce's life.
Yeah, and ruining Joyce's life. And yeah. So nobody really actually suffers any consequences from this except for, you know, Joyce. And this is based on, you know, on a book of the same name that, you know, written by the actual Joyce Lukezic. And it's interesting because, like, the actual Joyce, I guess, from what I've gathered, she was characterized as being kind of like frumpy and cold in the first trial, which was maybe what and the papers called her like the Ice Queen, and that worked against her. But Donna Mills, oh my God, I love the cat just popping in. Donna Mills is the exact opposite of that. Donna Mills comes in at 100 with fabulous outfits. So, first of all, okay, so Donna Mills, people may not know who she is.
But we do.
We do, yes. So, Donna Mills was one of the big... it was basically like Donna Mills and Joan Collins were the queens of primetime soaps in the 1980s. And Donna started out acting in daytime soaps, and she played kind of like girlfriends and damsels in distress in movies and TV during the like late 60s and 70s, which is kind of how she looks, you know, like naturally she has this good girl look. And you'll be interested in this, she went to school with the guy who wrote Grease, the musical, and he based the character of Sandy on his memories of Donna Mills in high school.
Oh my God, that makes so much sense. She is such a Sandy, and I love Sandy. I always wanted to be Sandy because I love Olivia. I love Olivia.
Yes, R.I.P.
Jack
Olivia.
Malta. They were like the best couple.
Yes.
I wanted them to get married.
So,
He's driving me nuts. This cat is like...
Oh my God. He needs love. So then she was playing this, you know, good girl type. And then in 1980, she got on Knots Landing, which is a spin-off of the big primetime soap Dallas, that Who Shot JR thing. And she played Abby Cunningham, who was like scheming and manipulative, basically like a villain. And it was casting against type, and it worked because she gave herself a trademark look by using the most eyeliner and mascara that you could possibly imagine anybody, like a human, wearing, like the most that human eyes can contain. And then she did Knots Landing all throughout the 80s, and then she moved into TV movies and became one of the queens of TV movies during the 90s. And she also did a makeup tutorial video called The Eyes Have It, where she teaches us how to apply her trademark, like 10 pounds of eye makeup. And then just this year, she was in Jordan Peele's movie Nope, the horror movie, at 81, and she looks incredible. So she's still getting work, still doing, you know, she's still doing it.
Eyes Have It.
Yeah. But the outfits, please talk about her outfits, because I counted 20 different outfits just in part one, in the first hour and a half of this movie. 20 separate outfits, each of which is amazing and show-stopping.
Well, my favorite outfit is the one outfit she wears when she breaks. I don't want to say she breaks up with her business partner, the doctor, the female doctor business partner she's with, the secretary from Working Girl, as you mentioned.
Yes.
At the end, when she basically has a fallout with her, and basically it's pink, and it is. God, she looks great. The shoulder pads, I mean, her body is so petite and well framed that, like, shoulder pads just hang so well on her.
Is this the gradient pink skirt suit?
Yes. And is it suede? Because in the 80s, like, people wore suede all the time, like these suede suits, you know? It was like a big thing. Pink
I
suede.
don't think so, but I wrote a description of that. I said that it's a gradient pink skirt suit with different shades of pink in different areas and shapes all across the outfit.
Yes.
With huge shoulders and one giant button at the center of the jacket.
I love it. Oh my God. Because it's one of those cuts that just, it hangs so well on a body. Like it's just, it leaves so much to the imagination. Like, it's kind of like almost midriffy. Like, it has those wonderful 80s, like, kind of, I call them Dorito, like, Dorito cuts, where it's like two triangles at the bottom that are very, like, pointy of a suit. And I love that look. It really, because I mean, it looks good on me. I mean, I like stuff that I would wear if I looked like Donna Mills, or if I had access to that at that time in my life, you know, that kind of thing. And it's the scene where she's talking to, obviously, the bad guy of all John Hughes movies, the principal from Breakfast Club, who is her brother. Yeah. And he's basically saying, you know, hey, you got to watch out, you know. And she has this conversation with him, and she's wearing this fabulous pink outfit. Oh my God, like that, I just was like, God, she looks amazing. And she has these wonderful heels that match. I mean, she looks great.
Yeah. My favorite one was she's going into work, and she's wearing this thing. It's like a black and white, like, surrealist pantsuit, and it has this splash of white right down the middle with all of these kind of squiggles on each side, and it looks so sculptural, because there was this whole thing, you know, like, you had the big shoulder pads in the 80s, but those came from, like, the 1940s. You know, like Joan Crawford, and this felt like that. This felt like something that, like, came from the 1940s, like, put into the 80s or early 90s. And I was just like, holy shit, like, this is... What level of... Because there's, like, the designer clothes that you could get in Scottsdale, Arizona, but this is, like, beyond that. This is, like, incredible designer stuff. So, clearly... the costume designer for this movie was just like, okay, in part two, she's in, like, a blue prison outfit. So let's spend the entire budget for the entire, they just blew the entire budget for, like, costumes on part one. And honestly, like, so watching this the first time, I really thought that it was just going to... I was like, okay, this is going to be all about the outfits, because the outfits would just come in, like, hot and heavy. They would just one after the other.
Flamin' hot Cheetos.
Flamin' hot Cheetos. Every single scene, she comes in another one. The only thing that I could think that's comparable is, like, Troop Beverly Hills.
Yes.
Where Shelley Long just has a different, incredible designer outfit in every single scene that she's in. And her makeup, it's sort of insulting to say before we talk about her performance, I want to talk about her makeup, but
no, it's not. Go ahead.
Her makeup is amazing. Yeah. So she could have gone, like, full no makeup, you know, like, you know, going for the Emmy, deglammed thing. And she definitely looks like toned down, but in prison, she still has like false eyelashes. She's somehow getting lipstick. She's wearing like mascara, eyeliner, blush. And at first I was sort of judging her for it. You know, I was like, oh my God, she can't even. And then I thought about it, and I just watched her The Eyes Have It, which is her makeup tutorial video, which is like a camp masterpiece. And in that she opens up where she's like wearing a little, like a white terry cloth robe, and she's supposed to have a bare face and be like, you know, see, I don't look like that all the time. And she's literally wearing mascara, eyeliner, and blush. And then she puts the other makeup looks on top of her currently existing clean face. She does a natural face over a clean face. And, you know, I was like, okay, but those eyes are Donna Mills, you know, like.
She has to. And
can
I just show you something that is really exciting to me?
Yeah.
About I'm really excited about it. to quote what is that? The Share infomercial?
Yes, yeah.
Share this with you.
Oh my God.
But this is ooh, that's on my profile. My nose is really red. Oh God. I need to work on
You look great.
This is the same mirror used in the Donna Mills. It's not the one from the video, but
no,
same
but
type where you plug in your crimper or your curler right there, and then you have your day, office,
oh my God,
evening, right there, and this is home, which I don't know what home would be calibrated to. Like home, like, I mean, what if you have a home like the Redmonds in the movie where you have like this open skylight in your living room so you can have indoor landscaping, like literally.
So you have an actual tree in your living room.
Yeah. You know, or your what is it? What do they call it? The corridor, it has a fancy name. In real estate, like the parlor, what is it called? It's called something.
Yeah,
I don't know. When they show you a house,
or
they're like, this is the blah blah blah, whatever. Anyway, okay, but you change it on here. So these are the things that are like, look, you can have this look, and you turn it on like here with that thing, okay? But then you can calibrate it, and you'll get all the different lights. And this is what Donna Mill uses in her The Eyes Have It video to give her natural looks. And then there's a mirror on the back, and then you can adjust it.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And
my babysitter Donna had one of these in the 80s, and I would put so much of her makeup on. And back then in the 80s, they had terrible makeup. Like the makeup would make my skin break out, so I would always have a breakout. Everything. I mean, it was just the era of chemical romance, literally. Like everything in the 80s was bad for you. The food, the makeup, the hair products. Like obviously, I mean, we put a hole in the ozone. Really, like 1989 alone.
Yeah, just
like
with
those
the
high
hairspray.
bangs.
Yeah.
Like in the crimping, like all of it, like everything in the 80s was, and that's why the 90s made sense, where it was like a return back to nature, no makeup, no this, like, oh, you know,
environmentalism,
no implants.
But I was thinking of this whole thing with like Donna Mills having like her Donna Mills face throughout the whole movie, even when it made me think that there was this. I used to know this like guy who was an entertainment lawyer. And he represented Marlo Thomas, who was the star of That Girl from the 60s.
Oh, I remember Marlo. Yeah, she's married to Bill Donahue.
Yeah. And so she would do personal appearances. And in the personal appearances, she would insist in her contract on having the venues pay for her makeup and hair people. And if they gave, any sort of trouble about it, her line was, if you want Marlo Thomas, you have to pay for me to look like Marlo Thomas.
Yep. And she's right.
And
I will tell
that's
you, when I work with men who male producers or men who are like, oh, I really love, like when I worked on Flabulous, like all the male producers I had never understood the importance of makeup ever or clothes. And they were like, well, I don't understand. Like, why does it take so long to do makeup? It would take like 2 hours to do my makeup, you know? And they're like, because they have to prime my face because I have extremely dry skin. I have eczema. So we had to deal with that, the hydration. And, you know, it took a long time to do my eyes, you know, because we would spend a lot of time on the eyes. And they were like, well, I don't understand. I don't understand why you have to make up. Can't you just do that yourself? I'm like, no, I can't. Are you kidding me? Because this is the only face I really can do well, is just a basic non-allergic face. I need an artist to come in and give me some. I can't do everything on my own, but they just don't respect it. They're like, well, what does it take? Like 20 minutes to do a face? I'm like, no. And they will always under budget you. They don't understand clothes or makeup, but they want the look. They want the product. But it's the same thing with, there's this disconnect because that's not something they have to live with. They're not judged on their looks or the way they present the way that women are. So they can't understand like the importance of it and that it's a skill. It is not something you just do. Like, you know, like I don't understand why. Just get some women in here that do that. I'm like, not all women know how to do faces.
Although Donna Mills always did her own makeup.
Yes, she did. and she, you know, she, good for her. I did not. I am not doing my own makeup like Liz Taylor and Cleopatra. No, I'm not doing that. Someone can do it for me because I am I don't want to say I'm butch. I'm just rugged. I'm just a rugged person. Like I'm impatient. I'm impulsive. You know, in that it's really hard for me to sit still to learn the craft and to do a good line. Like I'm more, you know what I'm good at. Like I can give a performance. I can come in and I can do a very I'm not good at doing meticulous tasks at all. And that's makeup is a meticulous task. You have to learn. You have to learn techniques, and you have to learn how to use different brushes. You have to learn different palettes, different skin tones. There is an art to it.
Yeah, and one thing that I noticed seeing clips, I watched like a biography of Donna Mills last night, and I saw these clips of her from the 70s, and she did not have that intense eye makeup, and she looked like an entirely different person. So
people say that to me all the time. They're like, that's you? And I'm like, yeah, it's me. Yeah. Like, because I look different with makeup.
And so now I judged her at first because I was like, oh, she just can't let herself be deglammed. And now I'm like, that's a balancing act for an actress, especially when you're known for being glamorous, you know, where it's like you want to give a real performance, but you also want to be recognizable because they hired you to be a star, so you have to be a star. And it's like you know, so like it's tricky. And
this is before grunge. You know, this is before before grunge hit. Like 1991 was still 80s runoff. You know, it was still 80s runoff, and it's before like the grunge movement hit where everything was like, ew, the 80s, like how dare you be glam, like in that way. Like you know, it wasn't like the indie era of like, you know, Boys Don't Cry, where it's like Hilary Swank is, you know, like did not hit yet, where it became really fashionable to do, like, you know, Quentin Tarantino had not come into fashion, where it was like, you know, playing these totally unglamorous, rugged characters, like having A-list people play frame themselves in the, you know, public's imagination as these different characters, these rugged characters. So, and also, hats off to her. I mean, honestly, I was like, I would really like to see Kim Kardashian in full arrest, or like someone really glamorous go into, like, I would like to see that, like one of the, is it Jenner? Yeah, like one of them go in there and be like, have their full, like, still getting, you know, their full fillers and their makeup done in prison, but everyone around them looking normal.
They do a good job of like casting women in the prison who look so like, I wonder
where they went to cast this film, because the prison casting is right on, because there's certain things you can't fake in casting, like you can't fake teeth. Like you can put fake teeth on people, and you can do that in makeup. But I think, and you can't there's certain things that are really hard to do for the makeup department to do, especially in the early like 90s and 80s. They weren't really doing this. They really weren't doing the whole like the makeup, the special effects makeup that they have now, like as you've seen with the Eyes of Tammy Faye and True Detective. That kind of like really good like detail work wasn't really there in the early 90s. So the casting was outstanding. Like I felt like in the prison scenes, I was like, oh my God, this feels like the Seahorse on a Wednesday night. Like the Seahorse when I was growing up was a very glamorous show gay bar, but it was mostly at that point it was a lesbian bar. So it had like intense lesbians. Like, I mean, these lesbians, one of them I remember because I went there with my cousin Siobhan. One of them was so prison. It was so prison. Like, first of all, she was a very big lady, and she was like one of the, if she was a man, I wouldn't even be into her. Like, she was just like very like she thought she was a homeboy. She thought she was like she presented herself like a wannabe gangbanger, and she had the biggest faux pas like I've ever seen. Like, she just had a huge like gut, and she was so rude, and she was like if you're not gonna fuck any of us, you better get the fuck out of here or I'm gonna beat your ass. And I was like, and my cousin Siobhan was like, oh, like, don't even talk to her, blah 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 blah. But yeah, that kind of stuff. Like, every time I'd come in there, she would like threaten me and be like, and it was so like that prison scene, it was so like that prison scene where I was like, oh, I've seen this before in False Arrest. Donna Mills prepared me for this kind of environment.
Yeah.
But a lot of that, like, as soon as they put her in this is what I don't understand about the county jail scene, is they put her in this prison with General Pop, okay, total like, and only like a couple hookers get to keep their fabulous outfit that look like they walked out of Club MTV, with their polka dotted outfit. And it's clear like these women are going to do something to this femme looking woman who's
rich
upper
lady.
class.
Yeah.
Totally femme. And they are like, aggressive towards her. And when she's leaving after the prison rape scene, when she's leaving, like, suddenly they're like, it's not worth it. Like, beat her up in front of the prison guard. I'm like, but you guys raped her. Like,
well, I mean, I guess the prison guard for some reason was ignoring that. I was also like, that's really, really loud for like nobody to hear that's happening.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, and it, I mean, it happened. Like, it happened to Joyce. She put it in her book. So
I will say this, that I believe it happened.
Yeah.
I'm not like, and I will say this, like, being in a secure cell with a cellmate is a lot better than being in General Pop. You don't want to be in General Pop, from what I know. My cousin Siobhan,
blowing up Siobhan's spot here.
I love her so much. We got to have her on. But I'll never forget when she got held overnight because she was in Benton Harbor with one of her girlfriends, and the cops, like, her, just so you know, Siobhan's white, her girlfriend was black at the time, so like I'm like, oh, so they arrested you. So they put them in so she got like basically sent to a jail in Benton Harbor. Just want you to know, Benton Harbor is like, it's not a good jail to be in. Okay, Benton Harbor is just, it's like Little Gary, Indiana, except it's in Michigan. So she was in General Pop in Benton Harbor, and I'll never forget her story. She was like, oh my, like, it's terrible. Like, she was basically, this woman it was like that. And a county jail tends to be it doesn't get the cred it deserves, I guess, of being terrible, because it is. You are basically put in a tank, in a holding cell with other women who can do whatever they want to you, or people.
Yeah.
It's terrible. So.
And yeah, no, it's, I mean, I guess, since we're talking about this, then we could talk about how, there's like women in prison movies is a whole thing. It's like there's even they call them WIP movies, women in prison movies, and there's like, you know, there's so many of them, and there's all of these like, oh, what was it? I wrote down some of they have the best titles. Reform School Girls, Caged, Chained Heat with Linda Blair, and Born Innocent with Linda Blair. You know, Women in Chains, Girls Behind Bars, all of these.
The Execution of Julianne Mabry.
The Execution of Julianne Mabry, a film by Katie Madonna Lee. And you didn't deal in the tropes, but there's like classic tropes for these. There is always an evil lesbian prison warden. There's always an evil lesbian prison inmate, or several. There's just lots of lesbians in general. I think for a while, prison movies and like vampire movies were the only places where you actually saw lesbians in film.
Yeah.
Always as villains, but it was like, that was, you know, there's always a shower scene. There's always a big cat fight with lots of ripped clothing. And somebody gets shanked. And there's like always like a tough, but underneath it all, like good-hearted prisoner who takes like the new girl under her wing and then like dies nobly. And so...
Okay, I did that.
Yeah. But like there's so this one, it subverts some of the tropes, I think, just because it's like a network movie. Like there's a shower scene and somebody gets shanked in the shower, but it's not really sexualized because it's like network TV, so you don't really see anything. And everybody keeps their clothes on during fights. But then there are these evil lesbians, which I wanted to say about the... Okay, so when Joyce goes to prison and she goes out into the yard for the first time, there are all of these lesbians like lifting weights, and one of them is like curling a 5-pound weight, like, ugh. And I'm like, get the fuck out of here. Like, and but so at first I was like, you know, I was a little bit like, oh my god, every single lesbian in this is like evil and threatening, and they play like electric guitar. But then Nadine came in, who's, you know, her
Nadine.
cellmate, and Nadine was like basically the only good person in the movie besides Joyce's daughter Eden, who actually cares for Joyce and is on her side. And she falls in love with Joyce, and Joyce really can't... Part of me, I was a little bit like, Joyce, come on. Like, your husband is so awful. Can't you just be, like, gay for the stay?
I
and
know,
like,
right? Like, I would
like,
be. Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
like...
Nadine is so loyal. She's got, obviously, a Sagittarius. I mean, she's a sage. She's making booze. She can defend herself. She's a protector. She's interested in truth only. Like, Nadine is good people.
Yeah.
So I don't understand. I'm just sitting there like, man, if anyone saw me the way Nadine would, I'd be in love with them. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like,
yeah.
oh my God,
Get you someone who'll look at you the way that Nadine looks at Joyce.
Yes, and that is going to be something we're putting on the gram.
Yeah,
we will put this on our Instagram. All the outfits and all the little things we've talked about, we will put on there.
Yeah, and so
yes. Oh.
Yeah, and so, you know, on one hand, I was like, okay, it feels a little bit like a, you know, like if, you know, I was like, okay, every single lesbian in this is like evil and threatening, but then, you know, Nadine kind of like balances the scales a little bit in that they show that like it can be this sort of like, she can have this kind of pure selfless love. But
I mean, listen, like, I gotta tell you, at the Seahorse, the only really mean lesbian I ever dealt with was the one who threatened me.
Yeah,
like, you know what I mean? And you're talking about like one person, and that's because I wasn't interested. I was never even mean to her, but it was just like she, you know. And I've had like really aggressive, you know, lesbians act like that to me before, but it's like not common. It's like the way that like you get like you're not into a guy and they get mad and they like threaten you because you say no. It's just it sucks to be sexually rejected, even in a nice way. So it's like, well, fuck you, you're ugly, you're stupid, I'm gonna kick your ass, whatever. But that at the Seahorse, what, there'd be like 50 lesbians in there, one would be shitty. I don't know.
Okay, then one thing I wanted to talk about was, like part one and part two of this movie, and then the way that the story and the way that like Joyce's character arc and Donna's performance change in those. Because for me, I was watching the first time that I saw this. I loved the outfits, but I was kind of like, I wasn't completely sold on it during part one, because like the plotting is good, and they do they introduce a whole lot of characters, and really in a really efficient way and all of that stuff, but you know that she's this cat.
I want everyone to hear his purr. Hold on.
Oh my god.
He's a lover.
Aww.
We call him handsome because he's like, he's already ready for love. He always has like a wine glass and roses for me.
Aww.
I know, dude.
Well,
I'm trying to talk about Donna Mills right now.
but so then, but we know it has that thing that true crime TV movies have where we know what's going to happen. Like Joyce is like, what, how could you possibly suspect me? This is outrageous. But we're like, oh, you're going to jail. And so there's no real like suspense during part one, because we're just watching things unfold and seeing how they unfold, but we know where it's going. And then at the same time, Donna is playing essentially like the only thing that this woman does wrong is work too hard. She is a saint.
Yeah.
And and she's just so well-meaning, unfailingly kind, surrounded by like one-dimensionally evil, scuzzy men, and she's completely unable to see any warning signs or take care of herself. And so there's not really like that movement, but then part two comes and you don't know how she's going to get out of jail. Like, that she's going to, because otherwise this wouldn't be Donna Mills if she's just locked up forever. Yeah. But you don't know how she's going to get out. And suddenly Joyce takes charge of her situation. And then it's like Donna Mills' performance, which was maybe kind of just like coasting by in part one, comes alive. There's something like Donna... she's fighting for something, and she looks like a very good girl, but she has this tough quality to her, this like kind of fiery quality to her, where like I thought I was going to be cracking up when she like beat the shit out of somebody with a mop. I thought it was going to be completely silly. No, she beat the shit out of that woman with that mop, and I believed her.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I love can we just talk about my favorite moment? My favorite moment. So I saw this movie. I just wanted to talk about the history. I saw this movie when I was a kid, and I remember watching it on TV with my mom, and my mom was reacting to it. And I remember seeing the rape scene, because I still am like, what the hell? Yeah. I'm like, first of all, I'm like, how do women do that? I was like, what? I don't understand. Women would do that to each other. And then the payphone scene is my ultimate favorite moment in any TV movie ever. Especially because I was like, whoa. Like, because, I was really little, and I was like, wow.
Oh my God.
This is crazy. And I was like, what would I do in that environment? Well, it's like, girl, when you go to public school and then in South Bend, Indiana, and when you have to work shitty kitchen jobs at fast food chains, you will toughen your skin up real fast.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I walk in there, they're like, you uppity bitch, you know. I mean, what is funny to me is the way they show prison movies in film is literally prison life in film is more accurate to my public school experience and my food service, low wage, shitty job experience than anything. Like, I get catcalled, I get harassed, I gotten punched, hit, and it's like, it's literally every shitty job I've had is how prison is shown. You sit around, you have cliques, people, you know, it's racially divided, same things, there's hostile tension, you have to be on your guard, like, in all these environments. Like, there's no safe place to go, administration's against you, management's against you, and you have to, like, and nobody gives a fuck about you. That has been my experience in public schools in South Bend, and in every shitty job I've ever had. It's like, even, you know, whatever, even on film sets, it's like, we don't give a fuck about you. Like, tough shit, you gotta eat this crap sandwich because you don't matter to us, because you're not a person of influence, money, and you're not gonna kill anybody. So, like, you know, we're not gonna listen to you until you're a threat to us, or we have to be nice to you. Otherwise, you're nobody. And that, to me, is, like, pretty much how. It's interesting to me because, like, when I've gone into juvenile, like the JJC and juvenile justice prisons and things like that, like, the way it's depicted, it seems less. I don't know. Like, when I did like a program, like I did a program in like the early 2000s, and like, not as a prisoner. I just want you to know this.
You were
like,
teaching,
I was teaching. So, like, I went in there and, like, I did, like, a day with the prisoners, and it was very, like, there were little spats between each other, but it was definitely not at all how unsafe I felt ever in school or at work. Ever.
Yeah. Like,
I felt way more safe being in those environments than I ever did and I guess it all depends on it's like everything. I guess it depends on the how the way the prison is ran and all that kind of stuff. But I'm not advocating for private prisons or prisons in general. I'm just saying, like, I'm talking about the depiction, the way it is on screen versus the reality of public schools I've been into and also, like, just work environments.
Yeah.
You know?
And I was going to ask you, because you made a movie with women in prison, how you felt that this compared to, you know, from the research that you did and, like, you know, for that movie, like, did this feel authentic, or did it feel like real glossy?
I do. I think the casting was very authentic.
Yeah.
I think the casting was very authentic, like, because they really showed women that are poor. They didn't have access to, like, health care, or, you know, and had hard lifestyles, hard lives. And they showed that. I feel like it was more accurate than now, you know, the evil lesbian thing. I think maybe that was, and for Joyce, listen, I'm assuming the character of Joyce was an upper class kind of Granger type of woman who's, you know, with lesbians. What? Like,
yeah,
so maybe,
it was very much that. And
it's kind of like, maybe this is her experience. You know, if I went into that environment, it would just be like, I would because I have my experience with lesbians and gay culture and all that kind of shit and all those things, it would be different for me. I wouldn't be like the evil lesbian, you know, like I wouldn't be like these evil lesbians coming for me. Like, it would just be a different reading on that experience. Maybe for her, it was her first time ever being exposed to lesbians. Maybe it was the first time she ever was exposed to gay people, judging from her life. And also thinking Ron was a good guy. Like, you know, it's like, dude, your husband's, like, you know, like a villain, you know. So maybe that was her thing. But I think they did a really good job with the casting. Now, I can't say anything about like violence and things like that because, like I said, like it's like you can't generalize a prison experience across the board because it all comes down to how the prison is ran, what kind of population is it, what is the budget, like is it county, is it federal, is it state, like what is it minimum, maximum, general pop, like there's all these different things that go into it. But I did think they did a really good job of showing general population versus minimum, maximum security population, like prison. I thought they did a great job because I think a lot of things don't show. Like people are like, oh, they're in the county jail. I'm like, dude, those are horrible. Like you are better off being in a secure prison with the cellmates, and like you are way better at being at like a well-funded, well-managed prison than you are at a county jail a lot of times, because like they're running out of, they have a bunch of really damaged people sharing one toilet, like 20 people. It's terrible, like, you know what I mean? And I thought it did a good job with showing that. And also what I really did like is that all the females, when she left on bond, they all congratulated her. So it's interesting to me because I feel like it started like with her getting her footing in the door, because you have to prove yourself when you're in those environments. You have to figure out where you fit in. Who are you? Do we trust you? Do we like you? What are you in for? What'd you do? Are you child molester? What'd you do? Like, who are you? What's your deal? And I liked that it didn't, like, what I can't stand about prison stuff is it always show kind of like they didn't have like the evil lesbian warden or anything like that with this, and I did like that, but they did have the lesbians lifting weights, which would be the group I would go to. I'd be like, hey, can I lift weights with you? I saw them lifting weights and I was like, oh, I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous of them. Like, I was like, but it's weird because I did talk to a couple prisoners that were like, where they went, they couldn't lift weights because it was seen as intimidation. So there is some prisons where you can't lift weights because working out is seen as intimidation. So you weren't allowed to do push-ups. You're not allowed to do squats. But Larry, he was I dated a New Zealander, and he was Larry. He was a provider of entertainment for them, pharmaceuticals and things. Anyway, he was in jail, and he was super big, and he kind of looked like just Jason Statham in a way, and he was in prison for like 10 years. And he would tell me, like, when he was in solitary, because he had sex with a prison guard, and when he was getting released, she started crying, and it came out. Like, the day he was getting released, she flipped out and cried, and that's how he got put back in. He got another 5 years tacked on because he was having sex with a prison guard. She got fired. And they put him in solitary. And in solitary, he would do 350 push-ups and squats a day. Each. Yeah. Because he could do it there because it wasn't as seen as intimidation. So that's what he did. That's insane. 350 like sit-ups, squats, push-ups. So when he came out, he was like, he was like super like just intense. And I'll never forget that story. He also had 13 cats, and he took really good care of them.
Wow, that is intense.
He was a cool guy.
Yeah,
I mean, listen, I thought he was great. I related to him. I'll never forget his first words to me were like, "Damn, you have a booty," and that's. I was like, oh, I was like, those are in now? Oh, I didn't know. Sorry. Oh, those are good. That's a good thing now? Like, sexism keeps changing. I can't keep up with it. I can't keep up with all the different ways it's changing and letting me know my body's okay or not okay. So, anyway.
Yeah. So, then, well, one thing that we can talk about is, because like the movie in part 2, when she's in the prison, then the movie really picks up. What did you think about the, just like the direction and, the score, like the technical elements of this film?
Okay. The movie is outstanding. It is really good. I mean, for a TV movie, it was really good. Like the camera work was outstanding. The one takes, they would do these one takes where they would have a zoom in and then zoom out, like pan in and pan out and cut. Like the choreography of the camera work was really outstanding, and the lighting was outstanding.
Yeah.
The production overall was great, and I thought they did a really good job with the direction and consistent camera quality throughout the whole piece. It was very tight. The film score I really loved, and I have to say the film score, especially in the scene, the love scene where she's like, I love you, you know, to Nadine in part 2, where Nadine is professing her love, and she's like, I love you too.
Oh.
That synth, the timbre was very Twin Peaks to me.
Yeah.
And so Twin Peaks had already come out at this time. So, and everybody, when Twin Peaks had come out in 1990, everybody was like, oh my God, the film score, the music is outstanding. And, you know, Angelino Badalamenti.
Angelo Badalamenti.
Badalamenti. Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's okay.
His
you
film
have
score was
dyslexia.
iconic.
It's fine.
And it has been used. I mean, those those suspended seconds, you know, minor seconds, and the suspended chords on the synth have been used over and over to imply magical tragedy for a long time and romance for a long time, and that was so used in this immediately. Like I was like, this was 91, that was 90, and it was used right away to imply this kind of like beauty, this angelic pure love, which was used in Twin Peaks very much to, you know, Laura's theme, and it has been used. I catch it all the time on Forensic Files and Cold Case and like Dateline, where they're using that voice every time they're like talking about like a dead woman. Every time they're talking about a dead body found, I hear the synth chords from Laura's theme, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my God, they love Twin Peaks right now. They're totally stealing this.
People do not realize that like practically every single TV show that's based around like a dead woman at the center, whether it's like Desperate Housewives or Pretty Little Liars or any of those, it was
or Riot
like,
Girl, my upcoming TV show.
It's
all based.
It was a huge debt to Twin Peaks.
Definitely. And film scores
Yeah.
from them have been different.
Yeah.
Twin Peaks was iconic in so many storytelling techniques, but also its aesthetic and its film music. Film music has never been the same since then, ever.
Yeah,
because
totally.
so much of it was probably the first time. Because in the 80s, you know, you had the synth, you had Risky Business, which was Tangerine Dream, you had Thomas Newman, all of his, you know, iconic music from Less Than Zero and Desperate Seeking Susan. That was still not seen as prestigious. It was still like, oh, well, this is 80s. Now it's getting reframed. Now Thomas Newman's 80s work and Risky Business is obviously reframed because so much of it was borrowed in Stranger Things. Like the opening theme to Stranger Things is literally it's Tangerine Dreams, the opening to Risky Business. Like I have the same dream. If you go and listen to The Dream Is Always the Same by Tangerine Dream, from Risky Business, it is literally the opening to Stranger Things. Exactly. And it's crazy because like only someone with a really trained like ear would pick that up, like who knows these film scores like I do. Or I'm sorry, that sounded arrogant, but whatever. But I know Risky Business in and out, people.
Listen, you have it. You know, like you have a degree in music composition. You know theory. You know these things. You have a trained ear. You're allowed to say that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that because I'm like I don't want to sound like I'm mansplaining to people, but yes, Twin Peaks was very big on that, and I saw that. The same, and it's not just the synth. It's what kind of synth. Is it a synth pad? What is being used in the synth? And it is literally the same timbre and the same like dynamics and the same soft and the same duration. You know, you're talking about like it's not just the use of synth; it's how it's used. And you know, are we having arpeggiated synth? Are we having a synth pad? And it's the same sound from Twin Peaks. That same like Laura's theme, like. You know, the Julie Cruz sound being used in those prison love scenes. And I love it. And I love it. I love it. It has, and the lighting, I love the, can we just talk about, I'm going to make a haul on our Instagram. I'm just going to cut all like the angles and show the lighting, because the lighting in this film is outstanding, and I love it. I love how they use the framing and the camera work. It's very concise and well thought out. It's all planned. It's not just, and that implies budget. I just want to tell you something. That's a budget thing, because you have to have, you have to have more people. The more camera movement you have, the more people are involved and the more gear is involved to make the camera smooth and to set up the camera to do so. In these types of films, you're definitely going to have stand-ins that are going to help the camera people set up the blocking to get their frame, to get their shot. You have your AC, the person who is setting up the gear, and the person who's pulling focus, and then you have your DP. Already, everyone has a DP, director of photography that, that is setting up like, this is how I want it to look, and telling the gaffer. But you have all these people who and you have the script supervisor, and then you have everyone watching on the monitors to make sure, did they get the shot? Did they get it? And I'm assuming they shot this on film. So holy crap. It was just very, very expensive to do. Anytime you see pulling focus or you see a really smooth camera work, there is so much money going into that. Yeah. There really is. I mean, even, and when I say money, I mean, I make very low. I mean, beyond SAG is like, wow, you're what? Every time I do in a contract, I'm like, yeah, I'm making, it's super low budget. So I can tell you from my point of view, these are very expensive films to make. I mean, not to someone who's in the biz, like one of the fancy upper middle class people making these films. Like, to me, it's,
but this was Donna Mills was a big star. She'd only just come off of Knots Landing in '89, so she was still huge, and this was a big project with a lot of money. I mean,
definitely.
It was big enough that they let it be a 2-parter with 3 hours. So so I thought maybe we could just do a couple of quick hits on some of the other performances, because there were a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Okay, so first, Robert Wagner as her husband, Ron. When I looked at my notes from the first time that I watched this, I wrote, clearly the husband did it, because they cast Robert Wagner, who killed Natalie Wood.
Yeah.
And I will say that anywhere at any time. Yeah. Like, Robert Wagner fucking killed Natalie Wood.
It makes, there's no way, I'm sorry, that someone who was afraid of water fell into water.
Yeah, just the way that
jumped
the
off
whole
a
thing,
boat.
Yeah, it was very, it doesn't make sense.
And also, can I just say the arrogance? Like, if I was Robert Wagner and I had killed, and I killed Natalie Wood, would I ever allow myself to be casted as a shady ass husband who would get their? No, I'm sort of like, dude.
There's something really messed up about being like, being cast as a murder, as this fucked up husband who, ordered a murder and stuff like that. And then you're literally somebody who was, who killed your wife in real life. So and also, yeah.
It was like, and can I say this about his performance? It felt like he was peacocking. Mm-hmm. And when I say peacocking, like, he was literally showing like almost like an admission of guilt to me in the performance. Like, he walked on and it's like, he knows, like, yeah, this is who I am. And he had that, I don't know what it is in me, but every time I see those teal ties with the little blue.
You mean the bolo?
Those just
bolo
always
ties.
Scream bad juju to me. Like, I'm a villain, hello. Like, I'm the bad sheriff, And the scene that was so, oh my God, there's just the part 2. I don't even know if it's in part. There's 2 scenes that are just so hard to watch that I'm like, what part was his idea and what part was the director's idea for these scenes? Such as the scene where the daughter confronts him and he's drinking at the bar, and
And not at a public bar, but in their house.
In their house bar. He's doing day drinking. He's drinking whiskey. And, it's showing like he's obviously battling something on his conscience. The daughter confronts him and is like, how could you do this to my mom?
No, it's that you gave her those pills. I know that you gave her those pills to try to commit suicide. Yeah.
Yes. And in the scene, he pulls Eden close to him. And he tries to kiss her.
Yeah, he like sniffs her neck. And she like recoils away from him in horror. And then this is what really, so she recoils away and says something to him like, "You're a bastard." And she runs out of the room. And then he turns back around, takes another sip of the whiskey, and then spits it out. Almost like I don't really know what that was, like a Twin Peaksy kind of moment to me, where I was like, is he just like spitting it out in like disgust with himself and how evil and horrible he is, or is he just like angry that she ran away or whatever? But it was this thing that I did not expect, where all of a sudden he would just like take a drink of whiskey and then just spit it out.
It's very Leland Palmer.
It was very Leland Palmer.
I got a lot of Leland Palmer vibes from him, from more like Fire Walk with Me, Leland Palmer vibes.
Yeah.
Like, where it's like, go back to your, not till Laura washes her hands.
Yeah,
I got, like that kind of vibe from him. It's like, honey, how is everything going the next day after she knows it's him? After she knows it's him in Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Honey, what's wrong? Like that typical, which I've experienced, which any survivor of sexual abuse is experienced. I'm coming into your room at night, and then in the morning I'm just going to act like the nicest guy because I'm gaslighting you, and everyone's going to think you're the one with the problem because you're recoiling from me, and you're like, get away from me. Very, very Leland Palmer move. And the biggest thing with his performance, the most repulsive moment that I couldn't believe, and all the reviews doesn't get any attention, is the scene where he's leaving. He gives her $50 for groceries, and then he says, "Give me a kiss," to the daughter. And it's like, she's like, it's like, what?
And she just stares at him, and then he leaves, or she like closes the door or whatever. Like, she's not, and we can. Say like what's Kirsten Warren playing Eden. I think she's really good, and she really comes into her own when in part 2, just like how Donna did when shit starts to go down.
Yes.
And she goes from being like a normal teenager who's like, oh, I'm worried about whether this boy likes me, to like now she's like, okay, I've got $50. Our stepfather's gone, our mother's in jail, and I have to figure out how to like take care of myself and my brother. And she gets this kind of like, and then she's getting pains, and it turns out she has cancer. And she really, I think, pulled off the thing that you see in like kids who have to grow up too fast. Yeah. Because of where, like, there's the scene right after Joyce had attempted suicide, quote unquote. I mean, like, kind of, it was a mix between that and, Ron, like, giving her the pills. But after she'd gotten out of it, then she was like, I'm sorry, I just couldn't face it. And Eden is like, it's okay. Yeah, and having to, like, be there with your mom who just tried to kill herself and is going off to prison, and being like, no, it's okay. And I really... the way that she played that felt genuine. It didn't feel melodramatic, because I've seen that. Right. I've seen that in people who have had difficult lives and had to grow up too fast, and they have this sort of way where they're like, well, it is what it is.
Yes,
no
100%.
Matter what happens.
Yeah. Versus like, and Donna Mills' character comes off as someone who's like, what? Like, no, and
when she first gets arrested, she's actually responds like such a kind of a Karen.
She does. She's
like,
so bad.
don't you, sort of like, don't you know who I am?
I'm I'm a
my husband
businesswoman.
my husband is a very prominent
kids, and it's
yeah,
like,
exactly. I don't do things like this.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh honey, your class is not going to protect you now.
No, it is not. Because, yeah, ooh, these managers aren't going to help you out.
Yeah,
You know, like, no, it, and, I felt the little boy, I think it's a little boy from Family Ties. He did a really good job, too. He was like, he did a really good job screaming mom. Like, those.
Yeah, he did a good job in that scene.
Upset. And I was thinking, God, like, no wonder why he's like he's like a mixed martial arts fighter now. Like, I get it. God, all the crying and emotional scenes we had to do as a kid. Mom, like, it's like, oh God, like he really, everything felt very real.
Yeah, and then let's see, who else do we have? We've got Dennis Christopher playing Wally, the coke and alcohol and crack addicted designer who was Joyce's friend, but then is manipulated by Dan Ryan into selling her out and saying that she told him that she was going to do this or, you know, whatever. He was the lead in Fade to Black, which is this, you know, this really good horror movie. And then he was in, oh my God, he was Eddie in the It miniseries, which was around this time, with Tim Curry. And his outfits are almost as amazing as Donna's outfits.
Oh, his outfits and his hair. Like, okay, so I love how his hair tells a story. Because when we first meet him, his hair is bleach blonde and also, like, messy and over the top.
Yes.
In part one, it's always so messy and it's just out of control. But in part two,
and he's looking very like Miami Vice at the beginning.
Miami Vice.
He's got like a white jacket and like a white skinny tie, and then later his outfit is like a polka dot shirt with red suspenders.
Yes. Which is funny to me is how and that's when Dan Ryan comes to him. He calls Dan Ryan, and he has a crack pipe at his desk when he calls a cop. He calls Dan Ryan to him.
Yeah.
And he doesn't put his crack pipe away. And then he offers him a drink. He's drinking at work too, which I guess in the early 90s and 80s was kind of normal back then, maybe. I don't know. And but he puts his coat on to cover his red suspenders and his polka dots, which I thought was interesting because he doesn't hide his crack pipe. He puts on a blazer. So I thought that was something very interesting as a character because he is almost covering up his flamboyancy to this cop.
Yes, because he's 100% coded as gay.
Yes.
Like, he wears rings and bracelets, and he has this very styled hair. And then there's a later scene when he's testifying where he's literally wearing like a leather bracelet and earrings. And in my like notes, I put like, oh my God, he's such a little tweaker leather pig. But
big leather daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and he's just like acting his face off. He's like smoking and twitching and like sneering. He's going for it. And there was something about, I don't know if yeah, exactly. He's like really, there's nothing subtle.
How are you?
Yeah. There's nothing subtle about this performance.
Which I've hardly ever seen. Listen.
Yeah. This guy had to have been like had an incredibly bad problem because he was not, most people who are coked up, they just like won't stop talking.
Yeah.
And they're really like, and but he was indicating everything. But I don't know, I still enjoyed it. I didn't think it was
I loved it. It was so fun.
Yeah, this was the most camp performance out of the whole thing. He was having fun, and then I was like, I looked up Dennis Christopher, and I saw that before his acting career, he worked as the assistant for Halston the
Oh,
designer.
baby. Okay.
And so I was like, okay, I really think that maybe he was, not just playing a gay man. 'Cause it felt very real and lived in. And he was such a little twink when he started out. And I was like, okay, you were Halston's assistant. This is like, there's no question in my mind any longer.
He was Halstead's assistant during his reign.
Yeah, in the 70s.
I mean,
Yeah.
that is like the best time. He had the best job at the best time at the perfect time in the universe.
Yeah,
because that was like the best time to be a twink. I have to say.
Yeah, he was the hottest twink in the hottest spot. So like, I think he's amazing. I love him. I'll watch him in whatever. I don't think I've ever seen him give like a bad performance.
He reminds me like he does vulnerability very well.
He does.
And hurt. When he looks hurt or caught, it is very heartbreaking. I will say
Yeah.
that. Like he across the board, even when I saw him in It when I was a little kid, I remember his performance as being the most making me uncomfortable when he would do that face.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's like Kelly Martin. It's just like God. It's just like you're really showing your pain and like vulnerability, and it's like a hurt puppy. It's just like you're like, oh my God, like I don't know what to do now. Like it's very disarming and disrupting because it really throws you like that meme I made where it's like, is this yours? And then you see his face and he's like, like, I mean, it's so gut wrenching. Like he does that face like nobody else. But in Act 2, when he's cleaned up his act and he's like, yes, I was high when I gave that, testimony. His hair is calm. It's still blonde, but it's calm and it's cut.
Yeah.
And he's wearing muted colors, like he's toned down his homosexuality. Like his flamboyance was all related to his crack cocaine use.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious because I'm very flamboyant and I've never done any drugs besides coffee.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, people. I mean, listen, I was hospitalized for eating 5 pot brownies once, but I didn't know that
they were pot brownies. Yeah.
I thought it was just brownies. And yes, I ate
fair.
5 because that's the normal amount I would eat.
I'm not, I'm sure that's happened to a lot of people. So then the other one is, we just really quick, we have to, once again acknowledge that Stephen Bauer is really hot as playing this corrupt detective, and he's actually very good though. They like 2 of my favorite scenes are him coaching one of the witnesses and like stopping the tape and then starting recording and then stopping it and starting and coaching him to pin the murder on Joyce. And then another one is in part 2 when he's being confronted by the second lawyer with everything that he's done. And he's caught, but it's a very different kind of caught where he's like, yeah, I guess I did do it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like he gets this sort of like snarky teenage thing, where he's like, yeah, that is my signature. And he knows that he's caught and he's mad about it.
Yeah. Right. And when the paparazzi and the press is following him, not the paparazzi, the press is following him out to his car. He's like, do you want me to hurt somebody? He's like, I mean it.
Yeah. I felt like that part was because the structure of a TV movie, they need to end triumphantly, and they had to show like a villain being punished in some sort of way.
Yeah.
Like they had to give some moment for people to go, oh, he got his, because none of the villains really got theirs in this.
Not even in real life.
No, in real life, not in this. Like it didn't happen. And one thing that I did like about this is that it said very clearly, like, there's not like justice in the justice system. It's very corrupt. It's very like messed up, and people will get away with doing horrible things. And, basically that you can't count on like the system to protect you.
Like that's what the lawyer says.
Yeah. He literally says that.
he says, he's like, it's not about justice, it's about who wins.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so I appreciated that it really captured that, and it wasn't just like, oh, I can't believe that, the courts let this innocent woman go to prison. It's like, oh, innocent people go to prison all the time. Just, most of them didn't have like, the money to hire the second lawyer, or like this, I don't know, all the publicity that she had. So this is another thing where, just like with Death of a Cheerleader, it's this, it's based on Joyce's book, and you can definitely tell from the way that Joyce is characterized, how she's like just so saintly and good, and everyone around her is so awful, that this is coming from a very slanted place, that it's coming completely from her perspective, and that there's definitely stuff that she's not saying and not talking about. And like, I think that she was done a huge grave injustice, but like, it's definitely presented in a way that presents her in like the best possible light, you know?
That's true.
So that it's like a thing to keep in mind during it. But this was like a fucked up, horrible thing. And, but I thought it was interesting that a big part of her being found guilty was apparently that the jury didn't like her, and that she seemed kind of cold and removed.
That's not unshocking to me at all.
Yeah, and that they didn't use any of that in this movie. That she came, Donna came to the court looking stunning, and she cried on the stand. Like, she did everything that, that is expected of a woman.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish that they'd gone more into that, because there's another TV movie starring my favorite actress, Tuesday Weld, called A Question of Guilt, where she plays this woman who, like, her kids disappear, and she's accused of killing them, and she's like kind of the town tramp, and she's not completely unapologetic about that. And basically the fact that she's like kind of tough and has slept with a lot of men, she gets found guilty because of that. She gets found guilty basically for being unlikable. And I feel like that's another dimension to this that could have gone in. But then, that would that have been believable with Donna Mills?
It's hard not to like her.
Yeah,
it's
she's
Donna
very
Mills.
likable. Yeah, and her whole characterization was so like, I'm so sweet, I'm so wonderful. So it would have, I can see why, but I wish that had been explored more. But otherwise,
because it is true. I can tell you, when people don't like you, it can ruin your life. The people who are like, oh, it doesn't matter what people think. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What? Yes, it
Yeah.
does. What? Who is saying this? Like, what person is saying this? Somebody who doesn't have to deal with people, who lives in a bubble? Yes, it matters. It matters because your safety, your well-being, your everything is tied to whether or not people like you, or at least are willing enough to leave you alone, not to harass you every day. Not being liked has huge repercussions for you. I mean, ask anyone who's bullied.
Yeah. No, totally. We thought of a new way to close out the episodes now, in honor of Mary Catherine Gallagher, the superstar from SNL, who's what's her name? The actress. Molly Shannon, the amazing Molly Shannon, who will, in every single one of her sketches, she will be like, I think that my feelings would be best expressed in a monologue from, Confessions of a Stripper, from the TV movie Confessions of a Stripper. And then she'll start like doing this incredible monologue and like throw herself on the floor screaming. And so you were like, why don't we have like a Mary Catherine Gallagher monologue for each episode? So I found one Now, how do you want to do this one?
No, you do it.
Okay.
You picked it. I picked the next one.
Okay. So this one is from where Joyce has already like turned the corner. She's tough, she's hopeless, and she's trying to find a new lawyer, and she's interviewing this guy who's going to be her lawyer, and she's really being tough with him because she's been burned so much. And so okay. And I can relate to this. So here, let me take a drink of water.
Get your water.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think that my feelings would be best expressed in a monologue from the TV movie False Arrests, starring the great Donna Mills. Okay. Trust you? I know all about trust, Mr. Tinnis. I trusted my first attorney. He told me I had nothing to worry about. I trusted my husband. He said he would always stand by me. I trusted my brother and my children, and now I'm completely alone. So maybe you'll understand why I'm a little reluctant to take anyone on trust. Scene.
And I love that the cat's tail. He's like, look, I love you. It's okay. I love you. You're okay.
It's okay, Lola.
Yeah. Handsome is right next to me still. Close up on him. Oh, shit. Hold on. There he is. Hi, Handsome.
Aw. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, my God. That was amazing. I love it. And for the record, wait. I will say one line if I got it. Isn't it? Is
yeah.
it? I'm already. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. My favorite
moment.
It
starts out with try it.
Try it. I'm already in here for 2 murders. I don't mind being in here for another one.
Yeah. I'm in here for 2 murders, and another one isn't going to make a damn bit of difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm already in here for 2 murders, and another one isn't going to make a bad... Sorry, I just heard my mom. So I'm like, she's like, what is going on? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
But I love how she goes, difference! Like, she's instead of going, difference. She's like, difference! Like,
yes.
Instead of staccato, it's like legato.
Yeah, no, she goes for it. And I know that. I've done that where I've like lost my temper, and you just scream a word for no reason at the end of a sentence because you're like, okay, I really need to like drive this home. So I'm just gonna, so I can totally see why Donna Mills only really came into her own once she started playing a villain, because she looks like a good girl, but she's tough as hell. And apparently from what I read, like, I mean, it seems like she's like a nice person and everything, but like also tough as hell and would like, like negotiate contracts and, and do all of this stuff and like set up her own production company. And like, she was very like proactive. She was not going to just like sit around and, be told what to do.
Love it.
I think that it's in the same way. It's like she needs something to do in a movie. And as soon as you give her something to do, then she's great. But if if she's supposed to be passive, then I think she's bored.
Yeah. And I don't blame her,
Yeah.
And I just love that this movie got to showcase her acting ability, but also her fashion ability and her ability to have like this just to show her off on screen. Like she was able to be like just stunning on screen and showcase her face and her body. And I loved it. And she made a scrunchie.
She's glamorous as hell.
Because Lewis pointed out to me, one of the first things he pointed out to me was that part 2 is all about the scrunchie. And it's true. So it's like crazy how much scrunchie is involved. And I love that because only in the early 90s, I just wanted to explain, the early 90s was the era of the scrunchie. Man, girls who had the scrunchie, it was like scrunchies were really expensive. I mean, for me, they were expensive. We were using rubber bands and stuff like that. But scrunchies were like, oh, our scrunchie is so fabulous. Like I remember in like, middle school, it was like, do you see her scrunchie? There was something about a scrunchie, which I don't think I got my first scrunchie until like 4 or 5 years ago, because I was like, and then by that point it's like, why are you wearing a scrunchie? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, they're pretty fabulous. So that concludes our show. And for our favorite outfits, I am going to put them on our Instagram.
Yes.
And for some of our favorite outtakes and lines, we will be putting that on our Instagram. So you can head on over there for more content.
Yes. At what's the name of that again?
Mother Murder Podcaster.
Yeah, at Mother Murder Podcaster on Instagram.
I didn't make it fancy. I just was like,
yeah.
People got to find it.
Make it direct. All right.
All right.
We'll see you next time.
Till next time. Bye.